Well, I hope you are all comfortable because this is the Israel Brief, where you join me, Rolene Marks, every Monday to Thursday, where I bring you those top stories making headlines in Israel, and I do it in partnership with these guys, Lay of the Land. Now, several of you have messaged me to say that you listen to the Israel Brief while cooking, or while having your morning coffee or your afternoon coffee, or even a G&T. And while I can't join you in a G&T just yet, I have another live broadcast to do in a short while, I can join you for a cup of tea. I like that we do this as a community. It is day 410 since the 7th of October. Why is it important that I count down the days every single day? Because we need to remind the world that there are still 101 hostages being held captive by Hamas. 97 were taken on the 7th of October, and 4 of the hostages have been in captivity for over 10 years. 2 of them are still alive. 2 citizens of Israel, Hisham al-Sayed and Avera Mengistu, and the remains of 2 soldiers who fell in Operation Protective Edge in 2014, Oron Shaul and Hadar Golden, are still being held captive. So as long as there are hostages in the Gaza Strip, we will count down the days, wear our yellow ribbons, and remind the world. So let's take a look at those top stories. Before we do get into the top stories, Stephen Spinellis, I have an answer for you for your question, a very important question. So important that I sought the assistance of an advocate in international law. And put your thinking caps on, guys, because on Thursday I will announce this week's Mensch and this week's Moron. I love to see the recommendations that come in. So put your thinking caps on. Let's get thinking who will be this week's Mensch and who will be this week's Moron. But we start with news. A woman has been killed as a result of a rocket fired by Hezbollah towards northern Israel yesterday. A woman, an Arab woman in the Arab city of Shfar'am in the north of the country, was killed during a barrage of Hezbollah-fired rockets. Rockets hit a residential building and at least 30 were injured, including children. A 4-year-old boy is in serious condition. Last night, another barrage of rockets fired by Hezbollah, this time towards the center of Israel. Now, when we talk about the center of Israel, we usually mean Tel Aviv and surrounds, and the area that we call the Sharon area, which, if you are familiar with Israel, it's places like Herzliya, Granana, Kfar Saba. And when we talk about Tel Aviv and surrounds, it's usually places like Ramle, Lod, even as far as where I am in Modi'in. Thank goodness last night we didn't have sirens, but we did hear the massive booms. Well, there was a rocket that got through the air defense systems and damaged a power pole, residential building and bus in Bnei Brak in Tel Aviv. This is a suburb of Tel Aviv. 5 people were injured. If you see the footage of this, it's an absolute miracle that nobody was killed. Meanwhile, the U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East, Amos Hochstein, landed in Beirut today, and he said that the ceasefire is within our grasp. He said it is decision-making time for Israel and Hezbollah for a ceasefire. UNRWA, that's the United Nations Relief Works Agency, we speak about them a lot here on the Israel Brief, said yesterday that at least 100 trucks carrying humanitarian aid were looted, they say, by unidentified gangs. Come on, guys, we know who those gangs are. We've been speaking about them since humanitarian aid started entering the Gaza Strip. The humanitarian aid trucks were carrying food, water, and other necessary essentials for civilians in the Gaza Strip. It is common practice for Hamas and other terror entities and other terror gangs to loot the aid trucks and either keep the aid for themselves or sell it for exorbitant prices to the citizens of Gaza. Now, there is a serious backlog of trucks COGAT, which is the unit responsible for sending in humanitarian aid, have spoken time and time again that we are sending the aid trucks through. We are investigating them, checking them to make sure that there is no nefarious content on board, and sending those trucks in, and we have offered to assist with getting more trucks to ensure the distribution of humanitarian aid. And it is always Israel that is blamed for the lack of aid circulating throughout the Gaza Strip. Well, now we know these are gangs that are looting trucks. There is a backlog of trucks. And earlier today, COGAT said that they had sent about 1,000 units of blood to Sahaba Hospital. So we are doing our part. What we need is the aid organizations on the ground that are more than just UNRWA. So when you hear UNRWA officials saying that UNRWA is the only agency that can distribute aid, that is a fallacy. There are other aid organizations working on the ground in the Gaza Strip that are able to distribute aid. And we really encourage people to check out the facts for yourself instead of just believing what is spread on social media. According to the Qatari Foreign Ministry, the Hamas political office in Doha is still open. Now, this follows reports towards the end of last week that the Qataris had kicked Hamas officials still residing in six-star luxury in Qatar out of the country. This was denied by a Hamas spokesperson who says they're very much still inside Qatar, and you can put the two pieces of the puzzle together. There were reports that Hamas's political leaders had moved out of Qatar and into Turkey. If you have been following, you would have heard some really inflammatory rhetoric coming from the Turkish President Erdogan towards the state of Israel. However, the US have cautioned Turkey into not allowing any Hamas officials into their country. And finally, in a very, very startling story, Canadian authorities announced that they had foiled an Iranian plot to assassinate the former Justice Minister, eminent jurist and human rights activist, and he is the current envoy on anti-Semitism for Canada, Professor Erwin Kotler. I've had the pleasure of meeting Professor Kotler, and you couldn't find a nicer man, a bigger mensch, somebody who has not only served as legal counsel for Nelson Mandela, but has also advocated for some of the most famous prisoners of conscience and human rights trials in the world today. The authorities said that in late October they had warned Professor Kotler that there were two individuals that they were investigating, and it was announced in recent days that that threat was lowered. We still don't have any confirmation if the suspects were in fact caught. Very, very sobering. I have to have some more of my tea. So now let's get on to the audience question of the day, and it comes from Stephen Spinellis. Stephen asks, can UNIFIL be taken to the International Court of Justice? This is such an important question because many people ask, is there some kind of justice that can be sought for Israel's citizens of the north who have been evacuated from their homes as a result of incessant Hezbollah fire for now 410 days? Well, according to Advocate Hirsch, who I spoke to, he says, unfortunately not. UNIFIL is a product of the United Nations Security Council. Remember, they put the UN Resolution 1701, which UNIFIL, which is made up of peacekeeping forces from a number of countries, are mandated to ensure that Hezbollah stay north of the Litani River and are demilitarized. Well, not only is it futile to take them to the ICJ, because the ICJ is also an instrument of the United Nations. I mean, you can also put the pieces of the puzzle with the UN together on this one as well. And given that the ICJ is now headed by a Lebanese jurist, he is the president of the ICJ, who despises Israel, it doesn't look like Israel could have any justice at the ICJ at all. So I hope this answers your question, Stephen. And remember, if anybody else has a question, please pop it in the comments section below or be in touch with us via our website. And on the subject of our website, you can find us on www.layoftheland.online, on Facebook at Lottel's site, on YouTube right here at the Israel Brief, on X at Lay of the Land 5. I keep wanting to call it Twitter. I guess it's always going to be Twitter to me. On Instagram at Rolene_Marks and on LinkedIn at Rolene Marks. So guys, have a wonderful rest of your day. L'chaim. And take care of yourselves and each other. I will see you again tomorrow. Bye for now.